Hello. I think we are live. Okay, yep, Mark is just coming into the room, so I won't need this. I am just going to close this window, open up my Zoom. Hi, Mark. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
There you go. Everything's working.
Cool. Okay, everything's working. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to
Okay.
ask you to do me a big favor.
Shoot.
I need to go grab a prop so that I can properly explain my extremely clickbaity headline, or rather tagline for this video. So if you will please just like two
Play
minutes, tell
Walmart
the
greeter.
yeah, just 2 minutes. Tell the people who you are, what you're about, anything that you're comfortable sharing about why the heck you, of all people, are dropping in on this channel of all places that you could be on a Friday afternoon in this year of grace, 2026.
All right, you're on.
That was your cue to start talking. Mark, in case you're not clear, you actually walked into a hot mic. Or at least you should have, yeah. You walked into a hot mic. So when I said introduce yourself, you have 2 minutes, I meant go. Okay, so Mark
Very
has
good.
2 minutes.
We'll get this figured out.
That's okay. Neither one of us are professionals. Could you tell?
No, thank you, Kathy, for inviting me
Okay.
to join you today.
But yeah, but also yes, go for it.
All right, my background is, I guess, academic philosophy, but continental, and I also have a strong background in religion. I was raised in a religious family, and left that faith, but have always maintained a strong interest, both academic and personal. And I've taken a lot of that material from my religious experience, my religious studies, philosophy, and others, and have converted it into, or in the process of converting it into a novel, about 25% of the way in the first draft, maybe a bit more, a third. And I'm drawing from Catholicism, from Western esotericism, from history of philosophy, also from late antiquity, which was, of course, saw the rise of religions like Gnosticism, Hermeticism, Middle Platonism, and I use all those to do my world building. So it's proved to be a really fun project. I'm enjoying it a lot, and hope to have it published at some point in the not too distant future. And so that's where I'm coming from. I'm looking forward to what Kathy has to say because, as I said, I've got an interest in Catholicism as a historical matter, but also as current events. I know they're undergoing a lot of changes, and I've been tracking some of these schism-related issues on my own, just personal interest, and
That
because it's important.
okay. That is a perfect introduction because that is a perfect segue to where I need to come in with my plot with just a second, okay? Because in the immortal words of the Godfather, pardon me, I'm going to speak Catholic for a minute. Okay. So if you are uncomfortable, okay,
I'm
everything that
fine.
happens as soon as I take this mantilla off is going to be Katie Lewis, trained academic with a degree, with a bachelor's and most of a master's degree in religious studies, who is going to be explaining to you exactly what the problem is with the SSPX and exactly why, from an academic perspective, if you are even slightly interested in the history of religion, you're going to be wanting to pay attention to what's going on in the Catholic Church over the course of the next 5 years, because we are potentially looking at the biggest change in Catholicism since the Reformation. Now, but I've got my Catholic hat on right now because, in the immortal words of the Godfather, pardon me, I'm going to speak Italian for a minute. Okay? So, if just mute me or fast forward until you see the mantilla come off, okay? So I'm going to do something that I am never ever do on my channel, and I am going to pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedicta ventus fructus Iesus Christus. Amen. In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I was just so hardcore that I said the Hail Mary in Latin using the original unmodified before pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death Latin version. So if you want to come at me, you got to come at me more liturgically and theologically trad than that. Okay? Now that I have established my street cred, allow me to continue. Okay. Currently, the SSPX is criticizing the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, because he had the temerity to speak to the woman who the Church of England have selected to be Archbishop of Canterbury, as confirmed by the current head of the Church of England, Charles III. Now, is it entirely possible that it is inappropriate that a woman is sitting on the See of Canterbury? Yes, it is. Is it indeed the fact that Prince Charles is a manifest heretic, and it would probably be better for him and his country if he personally were to convert to Roman Catholicism, and it might even be a really good thing for the world if England was to be a hereditary monarchy? If nothing else, then I think it would be really cool if, like, the if the Queen of England had privilège du blanc, because frankly, seeing like the only people who can exercise it being like Belgium and Monaco, I mean, dude, we can do better than that. We should have the wives of billionaires giving Pope Leo suitcases of money to get privilège du blanc, because they will pay for that. Okay, but I digress. I do that a lot, forgive me. The point is that it is up to Pope Leo as Pope to decide if the Anglican Church, if the Church of England rejoining the Catholic Church will happen with or without female clergy. That is above his pay grade. That is not above Pope Leo's pay grade. It might be above his pay grade if Pope Leo decides that, according to Scripture, Jesus was clear and said that women can't be priests. I don't know. I'm not the head of the DDF. I am not the Pope. I will be glad to offer the Holy Father my opinion if I am asked. I am not going to offer my opinion because I have not been asked. Bishop Dolan, if you want to ask me, I will offer my opinion and I will give you citations. I am not commenting on women's ordination at this time. I am noting that it's not my job. And it's not the job, frankly, of 99% of the Catholic YouTubers. However, because I am saying that, I am also saying that when you say that the issue of women's ordination is closed, you are setting yourself in place of the Pope, and you are placing yourself at strong risk of going into schism with the Pope, because you are not willing to submit your mind and will to Rome And that is what the Bible tells us that Satan did. So, Viva el Cristo Rey, submit to Rome. Done. Okay. Now I'm going to have a safe and perfectly rational conversation in which I am not talking like a crazy Catholic lady. So thank you for indulging me. This is like the anti-trigger warning. Now you're safe. So basically, what I was leading up to in an extremely weird and Catholic way is Pope Leo XIV recently met with the Archbishop of Canterbury. This is relevant for one very important reason. Well, actually, two reasons. Okay, the first reason is the Archbishop of Canterbury is a woman. And the second reason is that Pope Leo recently had a very nice meeting with King Charles III, in which he gave them this like very special chair that was like basically like, here, we want to be friends with you again. Whenever you come to the Vatican, the King or Queen of England can have their like special monarch chair that only they get to sit in, because you are an honored, you and your children will be honored guests in my home forever, right? That was the message of that chair. And the thing is like, the Vatican is like the Pope is probably the only monarch in the world who understands like the power of symbols on the same degree as the British monarchy, right? So this was like Pope Leo basically saying to King Charles, hey man, you know, the English Reformation was kind of dumb and it was a really, really long time ago. So like, how about you just like, you know, how about we make peace? Like we can like, surely now we can cut a deal, right? Like, do we actually have beef? We don't know, right? Okay, so that could happen, right? And Pope Leo met with the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's a woman, right? Now, the one actual sticking point that currently exists between the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England is women's ordination and the ordination of gay people. And the Roman Catholic Church is perfectly willing to ordain gay men as priests as long as the gay man in question is willing to be celibate, right? Like officially, the Catholic Church does not care who a priest is not having sex with, right? I mean, like if you think about it, like, would you mind unmuting just so that I can get confirmation that I'm like making sense, right?
Yes,
Oh, okay,
that's
yeah,
always how I thought of it too, is
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, why do like we do not care, like the only apostle that we kind of know what his sexual orientation was is the apostle Peter, because Peter was married, right? So one would assume that he probably had a normal marriage with, that Peter probably had a normal marriage with Peter's wife, right? Again, I'm not being blasphemous. I am merely assuming that in first century Judea, that a Jewish man and a Jewish woman who were properly married to each other would have had a normal marital relationship, right? That's all I'm saying about Peter. Peter's the only apostle that we actually know for sure, right? Everybody else, it's like, well, they were married. That's all. That's literally all we know about them, is like they weren't married. So my point, and I do have one, is that because of that really it's only women's ordination that's actually a problem qua problem, right? And considering that the Catholic Church is already willing to admit married Anglican priests as long as they're ordained through the Anglican Church, and we are willing to admit married Eastern Catholic priests, right? Say like the Maronite Catholic Church, for example. They have married clergy, right? Like you can be a Maronite,
like Western Rite Catholics.
yeah, like Eastern Rite Catholics, yeah. Eastern. Maronites are a particular Eastern Rite branch that are based primarily in Lebanon. The two most interesting things about the Maronites is the fact that they are one of the few Eastern Rite churches that didn't schism off of the Orthodox Church first. The Maronites were always independent. It was just when it became politically necessary to pick one, they picked the Pope. So like some Maronites will kind of brag about that, right? Because it was like, well, we could have been the they're like, basically, we could be the Armenian Apostolic Church, right? It's like we could have done that, except that we chose to submit to Rome, right? We chose to join you because we decided that it was the right thing to do, right? So anyway, but and also the Maronite, a lot of Lebanese, like a lot of Lebanese Christians ended up in the United States in the like late 18th, early 19th century for political reasons. Actually, a lot of just Lebanese people in general ended up in the United States. And in some places they were Muslim, in some places they were Orthodox, and in Arizona they were Maronites, which means that like basically there weren't enough of them to form like a separate like Maronite community, and they were Catholic, right? But they weren't English speaking Catholics, so therefore they married largely Mexican. They married Mexican women, right? Because they were Catholic. And these were like, like car dealers, grocers. I mean, like if you were a working class woman, like these guys were a catch, right? So as a result, in Arizona, shh, dog, you hush. So as a result, in Arizona, we now have like some of our most famous families are these like Lebanese Catholic families, or rather they're like Lebanese Mexican Catholic families that because like their maternal lineage is Mexican and they're Catholic, nobody remembers that the Basha family or the Corey family are originally Lebanese. It's completely Lebanese erasure. Okay, but my point, and I hope you'll forgive me this like weird Maronite digression, is that like basically, so the Maronite church came in with like, okay, we're okay with having celibate bishops, but we want to like keep ordaining married men as priests, right? And the Pope was like, sure, no problem. On the basis of that precedent, there is every reason to suspect that the Pope would say to the Archbishop of Canterbury, yes, absolutely, we will allow you specifically to keep ordaining women. And the other part of the reason why that is going to happen is I often tell people that, like, literally the motto of the 20th century is, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness. Because the story of the 20th century is the story of working class people who, for the first time in human history, almost had the opportunity to live up to their full potential if they were very lucky and they were very smart and they were very hardworking. And part of that was being in the right place at the right time, to a degree that if you were born in the 20th century and you were born 5 years too early or 5 years too late, you are never going to live up to your full potential. And I will make a video about that, laying that out, because I am right. But I digress. So the point is that, and this part is actually super relevant for the Anglican Communion, right? Because because everybody talks about the collapse in priestly ordinations, right? What nobody talks about is the absolute collapse in women going into religious life, right? I was born in the year of the three popes, or rather, I was born just before the year of the three popes. I was raised Catholic. Most of my friends were Catholic growing up, or Catholic adjacent. I do not know a single nun my age. They don't exist. I can tell you some of the places they are, and frankly, one of the places that all the nuns went is into Episcopal seminaries. Because for the first time in their life, they saw the possibility that a good, pious Catholic girl who wanted to be a priest, there was somebody who was willing to tell them yes. And maybe it wasn't the Catholic Church, but you know what? They could take off and be an Anglican, or they could be an Episcopalian, or they could be a Lutheran. And they could be a priest. And they took that because that was how strong their vocation to the priesthood was. They were willing to risk their immortal soul because it was more important to them to be able to offer communion in a denomination that believed in the real presence than it was for them to continue to be a Roman Catholic. And the thing is that Leo is my mom's age and grew up in Chicago, so he knows those girls. And he knows that they aren't nuns, and he probably knows where some of them ended up. And now this is where I do the thing that no historian should do, and probably no scholar of religion should do, which is before we watch this video, I'm going to predict the future. And I am going to say that if Pope Leo has the option of solving the women's ordination crisis and healing the Anglican schism at the same time, and the only price that he has to pay for that is by sending probably 1 million Catholics into schism, knowing that at least half of those are probably children under the age of 18 who are going to leave high control Catholicism and hopefully end up in the Catholic Church in 20 years. I think that Pope Leo is going to take that bet. And that's part of why I'm watching the video, is because in about 20 years, this is going to be a historical artifact. And I want there to be a document where somebody who was alive at the time, who's actually educated on the topic, is giving her first pass analysis. Because I think that in the future, YouTube is going to be the rough draft of history, and YouTube is going to be the rough draft of scholarship. And peer review is going to be replaced from, did you post it to your YouTube channel? And what did people say in the comments? And did you get a response video? Because if you fucked up badly enough to get a response video, you are not ready to write that up in a paper. So that was a very long-winded introduction, and I apologize for my self-indulgence. And now, Mark, I am going to, that was the,
I thought it was interesting.
yeah,
I
oh, okay.
It's one of
Well,
my I'm one of those people that have this odd interest in kind of obscure, religious. Hang on, let me get this, fix the picture here.
yeah, I'm actually bringing up my YouTube right now because I need to.
There we go. Like for example, I just had this long conversation with a friend of mine in my writers group on these really obscure corners of Protestant
Mhm.
Christianity. Seventh-day Adventist. This is a woman who is actually, she's in my writers group. We comment on each other's work a lot. And she was, I didn't realize this, the Branch Davidians were an offshoot of Seventh-day Adventists, a very fundamentalist version of that.
Yeah, that was actually something that I knew.
Yeah, and her
Um,
family went with that group, and David Koresh proposed to her, asked her to marry him. She turned him down. Her parents were pissed because they thought it was a great honor. Anyway, that worked out pretty well for her. And
yeah,
she was talking about all these just strange and parts of Protestantism that I wasn't familiar with at all.
yeah,
And I find that kind of stuff, just that all the permutations
yeah.
of
Well,
of
yeah. Well, and
religion
one
has always
thing,
fascinated me.
yeah. Well, and one thing that we were kind of talking a little bit, you and I and Dr. Sledge were talking about during his office hours. And once again, Dr. Sledge was always like incredibly kind and generous with his time, and didn't care if what were supposed to be space for him for people to get questions asked of him
Hmm.
kind of turn into this weird little symposium. But one of the things that like we were talking about there was basically the way that the like basically the way that the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution killed like the entire, like completely just wiped out from the ground up, like napalm,
Hmm.
like scorched earth,
Yeah, the
salt. Yeah,
education system of the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah. The
Can I
educational.
pause you right
Yeah,
there just
yeah,
a quick question?
yeah.
Can you just give me what's the big picture here? What is it you're
Okay,
interested in?
okay. What I am interested in, if I had to explain this, is I am interested in traditional knowledge systems, and I am interested in traditional cultures.
Hmm.
And I am
You mean like
interested,
indigenous?
no, traditional, not just indigenous, right? And see, that's the problem, is
Hmm.
that um for reasons that I need to lay out, and I think that it's super relevant right now because JD Vance is the perfect example of the problems with this.
He's such a perfect example of all kinds of bad
Yeah,
things.
yeah, exactly. Because, okay, so, but this is my thesis, is that basically during the Enlightenment and then again during the Enlightenment, European Protestants chose to devalue and as much as possible eliminate the traditional culture of transmitting women's knowledge
Oh, yeah.
and um
Like midwives and so on,
but not just midwives,
healers.
but
Yeah,
yeah, but okay, but you have to understand, I'm not just talking about midwives, right? I'm talking about brewers, I'm talking about
Mhm.
cooks, I'm talking about bakers.
Herbologists.
No, get your mind out of esoterica, right? I'm talking about,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
yes,
it's not
yeah,
esoteric. You finish,
yeah,
but and then
yeah,
I'll give you
yeah,
a
yeah.
little
But the
asterisk.
thing is that, okay, people talk about burning witches, and then they're like, oh, well, they killed all the herbalists. But the thing is that they also got rid of the old lady who could read and ran the dame school and taught the little kids how to read and write. They got rid of the old lady who led all the other old ladies in praying the rosary. They got rid of the weird mystic aunt who is probably autistic, but who lived with her brother her whole life and helped raise their kids, right? Like that whole, like basically village Europe, traditional Europe, indigenous Europe, right? Died in the Protestant Reformation. And then um basically the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution killed the guild system, right? It
Mhm.
killed craftsmen, it killed the village blacksmith. It also, though, because the other thing is that there's the
I'm
good,
listening. I'm going to close the
yeah,
door.
okay,
There's some
is
stuff
that
going on,
there's
but keep talking.
okay, is that there's the good side of this too, right? Because the good side of this is that, like, basically prior to like prior to the Enlightenment, the university system existed for two purposes. It existed to skim off the absolute creme de la creme of the, like, merchant class and even some really smart peasant boys and put them into the clergy, right? Because your average peasant knew that if you could just get one really smart little boy ordained, he could get the whole family out, right? Because he's an abbot or he's a bishop, right? He can't have kids, but nepotism is a thing, right? He can advance his nephews all day long, right? The other thing that the
So
university,
are you saying this is kind of like a kind of a sideways feudalism?
yes, yes, what I'm saying is, this is the, if you want to understand how European feudalism works, you have to understand that European feudalism had an escape valve. And that pressure valve was called the Catholic Church. Because if it's like 1200 and you are a ferociously smart, like basically what I'm saying is, if you are Thomas Aquinas, right? Thomas Aquinas did not get thrown away because there was a system in place that took a man like Thomas Aquinas, who came from, like, he didn't come from a noble background, right? He wasn't dirt poor. Like, his family could afford to take their smartest kid and give their smartest kid to the church, right? And the Catholic Church took that and gave us Thomas Aquinas, right? That's what I'm saying, right? Now, the other thing that the traditional education system and the university system did was to take the, like, sons of the aristocracy who either were not fit to be aristocrats
Yeah, usually the
or
third sons.
yeah, or even sometimes the first sons. If the okay, like say for example, you have a family business, right? And your oldest son is Saint Francis of Assisi, right? Saint Francis of Assisi is never going to be a successful wool merchant, right? So you're St. Francis's dad, right? You have two options. Option one is you psychologically abuse your kid until he gives up this monk bullshit. And St. Francis, and he, settles down, marries a nice girl named Claire, and they have like 40 billion little Italian babies. Or you let Francis go be a monk, you adopt, you take your nephew or your cousin or your cousin's kid, right? And you marry him to your daughter, because now you've got a heiress with no son. So she has the pick, so your heiress now has the pick of the litter, right? Like every family in Assisi is like throwing themselves at your daughter's feet because they want her and they want her money, which means that guess what? She's going to marry a really nice guy who treats her really well, because whatever the best was in that town at that time, you gave your baby girl a good husband, which for 90% of recorded human history is the best gift that any woman could ever be given by her father. And all of that died, and died bloody, in the Industrial Revolution. And the way that we made, and this is what like people say that the American educational system is broken, and it is broken. But this is what the American educational system was actually built to do,
Yeah.
because the first public school was opened in 1930. Okay. And I'm sorry, not 1930, 1830, right?
Hmm.
That's basically the point when when like the tradition, again, the dame schools are dead, right? There are no, like, so the traditional method, so if you're depending on the women's education system, you can't do that anymore. That's gone, right? But maybe you can preserve the traditional men's educational system, right? So basically, what men do is men get out of teaching, and white men give that job to the only people who they have ever trusted to raise their children and to socialize the servant class in how to behave like people. They put that power into the hands of white women.
That's right.
And that's why for the 19th and 20th and even into the 21st century, the history of feminism and the history of women's advancement has primarily benefited white women.
That's right.
Because, and when critics of feminism say that feminism has unsexed women, they are absolutely right. Because round about 1930, or sorry, not 1930, 1830, basically our, like, and I'm saying this like I am speaking as a white woman speaking to a white man, right?
What?
Okay. Um, okay. around about 1830, your ancestor, your umpty great grandfather, went to my umpty great grandmother, and you said, I need to go to work. I can't be a teacher anymore. I can't teach the kids how to read and write because I have to go fight the Civil War. I have to go write Das Kapital. I have to figure out how to build the new technology that is going to um like ultimately make slavery unnecessary. But I can't, but if the kids are going to go to school, that's your job. And my umpty great grandmother looked him in the eye and she said, what the hell do you think we've been doing every time you guys have had
I'm
to go to
interrupted. Hang on just a
war?
sec. Hey, I'm on the, got a call.
Yeah.
What you got?
See, my new old glasses.
Nice.
This is the original. What's the guy, the optician?
Say hi.
said,
Hi.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
Hi. Hi. I was supposed to be talking about the SSPX. Instead, I've started explaining like
I do
how
want to
the
swing around to
American
that.
how the American educational system happened and how we can fix it.
Very interested here, longtime
Okay.
teacher.
Okay. Well, I hope that you'll come back and watch this then, because this is actually probably made for you and not for your husband. But that's okay
I have
because
a background in, I was in
yeah.
pedagogy as well.
Yeah, because you've explained to him enough that he can pick up what I'm laying down. So
Oh, yes.
thank
It's
you
all
for
credit to me.
yeah, well, thank you for educating him.
My pleasure, always. Good to meet
Okay.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I apologize. And again, please thank your good wife for letting me like borrow her husband's ear for a second because
Oh, she's used to it. I talk to all
yeah,
kinds of
exactly.
people.
Well, no, but I'm glad that like, but I'm also,
she's
but I
very more
am,
tolerant than I deserve.
yeah, but I am seriously glad that she has trained you to listen to teachers rant about education, right? Okay. So basically, we are imagining an imaginary dialogue that did not really happen like this because, like in education, social change does not happen to individuals, social change happens to groups. But in much the same way we
Mhm.
can say, humans decided to walk upright, we can say white men and white women decided, we can say white people in America decided to do this, right?
It's
Okay,
a metaphor.
right.
It's not
Yes, okay.
literally accurate.
Yes, okay. This is a metaphor, right? And basically, so this white woman standing there in 1830 who has just been told that on top of everything else that women in her culture are being asked to do, has just been told that, okay, you're going to have to take over nursing and teaching public school now because we don't have enough men to do that. We don't have enough white men to do that anymore. And you're already having as many babies as you can possibly have. And most of the time, all those babies live to grow up. So we have clearly, like, as a culture, maxed out the whole like have more babies option. So we've got to do something else.
So you're thinking in terms of a labor issue, and
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, yes. No, what I'm saying is this is labor, this is race, this is gender, this is my
do
unified
you have a
field.
what is the
Yeah, this is my unified field theory.
okay? Can you give your unified field theory in
Okay.
a few phrases? How would you describe it? I know it's going to be
Okay.
rough at this point, but where you go? Number one, what's your goal? Number two, how would you state what you're imagining? And number three, um, what do you think what are the implications? What is it you hope to accomplish?
Okay. My overall unified field theory, and you were right to suggest that really I'm kind of using the American educational system as a case study,
Hmm.
because that's a case study that I am very well equipped to talk about.
But I know, but you're talking about stuff in the
Okay,
past.
okay,
You're
okay,
talking about
okay. Yeah,
Catholicism.
yeah, yeah. Okay, because it all fits together, right?
Yeah, I get that,
Because
I haven't heard what
okay,
it is yet.
my ultimate unified field theory, and I'm hesitant to say this out loud because it's one of those like big if true that has implications for like basically every field in the humanities, right?
Hmm.
Okay. This, and I'm going to go out of screen sharing for a second because this is officially not the proper SSPX screen um, channel stream, and I will probably have to rename it. Okay, this is my unified field theory. I think that the reason why humans were able to become successful as a species is because until puberty, there is not a whole lot of physical difference between a between a between a male-bodied human child and a female-bodied human child, right?
Hmm.
I think that that meant, but the thing is that like basically most people sometime between like about the age of 2 and about like 16, which is when puberty ends, figure out what gender they are, right?
Do you think it's more,
Oh,
you
no,
find
no, no,
gender,
no, no. Okay, please, just, I'm giving rhetorical questions because I'm trying to lay out an extremely complicated argument using language that I think people will understand.
Mhm.
Okay, this is what I'm saying. I think that as a species, we were able to effectively delay puberty into young adulthood, right? Because humans have a remarkably low level of physical dimorphism, right? We have like minimized physical dimorphism but between men and women like to an absurd degree, right?
Do you think that's
Like
true of mammals in general?
compared to the other great apes,
Okay.
compared to the other great apes, we have the lowest level of human dimorphism of sexual dimorphism of all the great apes, right? So I think that what happened, and the thing is like, okay, every culture has man and woman as a box, right? There is a boy box and there is a girl box, right? Gender is real, right? But there are some cultures where being good at math is coded as a female trait, right? There are cultures where weaving is men's work. There are
Hmm.
cultures where agriculture is women's work and hunting is men's work, right? So what I'm saying is that gender is real. And what I'm saying is that in most traditional societies, man is a job and woman is a job. And what I'm saying is that I think that probably until somewhere in the Bronze Age, what your genitals looked like when you were born probably didn't determine your gender. And I think that it probably didn't determine your gender Yes, yes, like the existence of third gender people is an excellent example of that. I'm
Mhm.
also thinking about the way that, for example, um, like for example, the Navajo, right? And if there are any Dene people here and I misrepresent your culture, I apologize. I am repeating what I have heard from other Dene people. If I offend you or make a misrepresentation, please tell me and I will accept the education and the correction and make an apology. Okay. So this is my understanding of Navajo gender, right? Okay. There's basically, there are people who are assigned male at birth who grow up and identify as men, right? There are people who are assigned female at birth and who grow up and identify as women, right? There are people who are assigned male at birth, who are assigned female at birth and grow up and identify as men. And there are people who are assigned male at birth who grow up and identify as women, right? Now, from the point of view of people coming from the outside who are saying that if you are that you are assigned boy at birth and boys grow up to be men, and you are assigned girl at birth and girls grow up and become women, right? Then the Navajo have 4 genders, right? According to the Navajo only have 2 genders. You're a man or you're a woman. And a man can marry a woman, and a woman can marry a man. And the fact that that man and his wife may both have penises, or the fact that that woman and her husband might both have vaginas, or the fact that in this family the husband got pregnant and had a baby. I mean, that may or may not be, like, I do not know in that culture if a man giving birth would be culturally acceptable. I would assume, knowing what I know about Dene people, that if that ever happened, a pregnant man who gave birth would get such a raft of shit from every man in his family that he would have to think really, really, really hard about if he loved his wife enough to give birth to her baby. On the other hand, from what I know about Dene women, I will guarantee that every Dene woman in that situation would be looking at the mother of that baby and they would be saying, damn, girl, you really lucked out. I wish I could get my husband pregnant because, if men had to give birth. So I'm just saying that, like, okay, imagine a world in which men can give birth, right? Imagine a world in which sometimes women could have to worry about getting somebody pregnant, right? And I know this sounds crazy, but I ask you to consider the fact that human beings lived really happily as hunter-gatherers for about like 50,000 years. And we've only had written records. We've only had like written records for like maybe like 6,000 of that. So we don't really know what was going on, but I think that we have enough hints in the Hebrew Bible to make me think that maybe I'm onto something, because I would ask you to consider, like, just look at the lives of the patriarchs and tell me how much more those stories make sense and how much less abusive those situations sound if you do not assume that everyone in that book who is using he, him pronouns was born with a penis, and that not everyone in that book who is using she, her pronouns was born with a vagina. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now, this is actually super relevant to the whole SSPX thing, because basically we have a situation where the issue comes down to, can the Catholic Church theoretically accept the Anglican Church back into communion if they are ordaining women as priests, right? Now, if Pope Leo were to buy an argument like the one that I made, which I don't know if he will, I might be like excommunicated for heresy, I don't know. Consider please this like video as like literally my 95 theses, because here I stand, I can do no other, because I think I have laid out something that is both true and beautiful and correct. But this creates a situation, whether or not Pope Leo hears about or buys my argument, that the SSPX is going to go into schism on July 1st. They have already said they will. And the SSPX is yelling at Pope Leo for meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, probably hoping that they can scoop up dissident Catholics who really, really, really cannot, who like women's ordination is their hill to die on. Or also, there's a bunch of Anglicans who are about to go into schism specifically because they cannot tolerate the Archbishop of Canterbury being a woman. Then, on top of that, you've got the fact that one of the issues that's always bubbling under the surface in Catholic Anglican relations is, do the Anglicans have valid holy orders? Because there are Anglican priests today who have valid apostolic succession from Catholic bishops. And some of those guys actually, like in the 19th century, went to Roman Catholic bishops and got reordained just in case, right? So what I'm saying is that Pope Leo was a math major, and I think that if Charles and the Archbishop of Canterbury were to walk up to him and say, hey, do you want to heal the Anglican schism? And somebody else says in there, well, and Athanasius Schneider is in that room. And Bishop Schneider says, but Pope Leo, if you do that, I and the SSPX are going to go into schism. Pope Leo, well, okay, he will not say this because Pope Leo is a good, kind, and gentle man. And also, he was raised in a French and Italian family in upstate Illinois, so he doesn't speak downstate vernacular. Because if Pope Leo had been born in Springfield instead of in Chicago, his answer to that would be, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. As the SSPX walks out the door, and Pope Leo then trades approximately like 1 million people, half of whom are probably going to be back in the next 20 years, for like the entire Church of England and possibly most of their descendants. Keeping in mind that like a non-zero number of the Anglican clergy were raised Catholic and really only left because they either wanted to get married or be a woman. Or they were gay and they got kicked out of a Catholic seminary for being gay. So basically, like, I cannot, like, I am predicting that Pope Leo is going to look at this and go like, where's the downside? Now, to illustrate this point, and also just because, like I say, this is a potentially important historical document, Mark and I, and Mark, thank you for being so kind and indulgent. I want to sit down with you and show you now this this like extremely extremely traditional Catholic who is not part of the SSPX but is very sympathetic to them, and he is like giving a very representative example of the trad reaction to the existence of a female Archbishop of Canterbury, as well as what the SSPX has to say about it. So I'm going to start. And I'm actually going to roll it back because the over drama of his intro always amuses me.
It is Good Friday, and while the news doesn't seem to stop even for very solemn days like this, if you can, later today, either go to, well, not Mass because it's Good Friday, but go.
Oh, Mark, I did want to say, you and I are, I think, of about the same generation and probably similar life experience. And I am not saying this to comment on Anthony Stein's appearance, which is fine, but or his current way of dressing, which is fine, or the way he may have dressed in the past, except that it is relevant. Okay, Mark, look at Anthony Stein and tell me that about 1998, he did not own a fedora.
I cannot do that. I cannot say that.
He owned a fedora, and
as soon as you said that, it's like, absolutely, he had a fedora.
And he wore a suit and tie, whether or not it was appropriate or not. And I would be willing to bet you $5 that he is that he used to be a Squirrel Nut Zippers fan, unless he was an edgelord and then he was into Cherry Poppin' Daddies. And I am not going to be taking questions on that at this time. If you do have questions, put them in the comment, and I will translate that from like Gen X from like late Gen X into English. But Mark knows but now I had to say that because Mark now understands who Anthony Stein is. He is that guy who grew up, got married, and became a Catholic YouTuber. Also, he has a PhD. Yeah. Also, he has a PhD in sociology, and actually had a job teaching at a very, very conservative Catholic college, except it went belly up. Okay. Mark now understands exactly who Anthony Stein is and can respond appropriately.
To observe the Holy and participate in the Holy Friday events at your parish, if you've never participated in the Good Friday, I guess, liturgy, but if you've never participated in that, you should. It is an experience. And make sure in some way to keep your mind on the solemn things today if you can. And I have 2 regular videos.
Okay. I just want to pause here because I will say that what he just said there is the reason why I bother engaging with Anthony Stein's content and why I actually like listen to him on a fairly regular basis is because of takes like that, right? Because Anthony Stein is objectively right. The Good Friday liturgy, where you don't even know what to call it, because at Catholic services, like it's the Mass, right? That's the ceremony. And on Good Friday, we don't have that ceremony. And it's something completely different. And whatever it is, it's not the Mass. And like the tabernacle is open and there is no Jesus in there. And there's like whatever was consecrated Thursday night, and that's all the host there is in your entire parish. And he's right. Like, that is a piece of liturgy and a piece of ritual that is designed to make people in any time, in any place in history, have as close as is humanly possible to the effective experience of being an early Christian immediately after the crucifixion. And I am saying this as a trained professional and as someone who has done participant observer research and is trained to do participant observer research in an academic setting. The Catholic Triduum liturgy is a piece of art. And it is a tragedy that we don't now have the kind of scholarship going on that can really talk about how brilliant that liturgy is. Because, like, if you want to like take Victor Turner's theory of how ritual works and apply it to Lent and the Triduum ritual and to good and then of course to Easter, because Easter is the end, right? It is Victor Turner's ritual process, like point by point by point to the T. And it really shows, like, when people want to say, oh, the Novus Order Church doesn't have tradition, it doesn't have the truth, it doesn't have the ritual. No, it has come up with, like, the period between Christmas and Easter is like the most perfect piece of like initiatory and explanatory and catechetical like just experience that I am aware of. And I am saying this not as a Catholic, but as a trained professional. And if people are interested, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel, because I will do a series like really breaking down like this whole thing in an academic sense. But basically what you've been getting from me is like the rough draft. This is me making a presentation to the class, but I'm not ready to write the paper yet. And I'm not going to put that kind of effort into it unless people really want the paper. But the point is that we are seeing, me and Anthony Stein are of the same generation, but otherwise our lived experiences are as completely different as two human beings can be, and still be Americans who share the same religion. And he and I completely agree about the Good Friday services. They slap. Oh yeah, he goes to Latin Mass. I go to English or bilingual or Spanish Mass. We have the same effective experience. That's why we're both in the Catholic Church, although he may be going into schism soon. And I feel bad because I went into schism and it kind of sucked. Okay, so so again, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Is there anything else that you want that you do you have any questions at this time? I am taking questions.
No, not at this point.
Okay, so let's continue.
For you today that could help with that. Sermons from St. Augustine and one from Archbishop Vigano that he gave recently. And tomorrow, I am sure I'll give you his actual Good Friday.
Okay. St. Augustine, the man, the myth, the legend. Well, not the myth. Oh God. Please forgive me. I did not intend to put the phrase myth and St. Augustine in the same sentence, because the last thing the world needs right now is patristic mythicism. Okay, St. Augustine existed. We have, like, I have seen the body, okay? Like, literally, in my life, I have held in my hands the mortal remains of St. Augustine, right? I have seen the body. And so St. Augustine, real guy, really existed. We have his biography, we have his books, right? Okay. St. Augustine is like he is okay, he's the man who came up with original sin, right? All of huge amounts of Catholic theology downstream from Augustine, right? But the point is that Augustine is as orthodox as it gets, right? Archbishop Vigano, or as I like to call him, excommunicated, schismatic, former, resigned in was withdrawn from the U.S. in disgrace, former Archbishop Carl Maria Vigano, is all of those things, right? He is as unorthodox as you can be. Like, he has literally been excommunicated for heresy and schism. And according to Vigano's own logic, right now, he is going to hell. The only way that he can either sleep at night or not be kneeling barefoot in St. Peter's Square right now is the vast and wonderful power of Na'ah, which has allowed him to say that he is not excommunicated because, and check this out, Pope Leo XIV is a heretic who is in schism with the Catholic Church, as represented by the person of Carl Maria Vigano, one of like maybe 12 bishops in the entire world who are actually keeping the Catholic faith. And that is literally Vigano's position. That is not a straw man. And if you think that's a straw man, make a reply video, and you better bring receipts, because I've got a playlist. Okay, so I'm just pointing out, and I'm also saying this to point out the fact that this is the problem with Anthony Stein, is that he will cite Augustine and he will cite Vigano, and he will take the parts he likes from Augustine and he will take the parts he likes from Vigano, and he will make you think that Augustine supports Vigano. And you know what? Pope Leo can do the same thing, and Pope Leo's the Pope, and Anthony Stein is some rando layman in Oklahoma, And I may be some rando laywoman also in Arizona, but I agree with the Pope. So I'm pretty sure that, like, in this sense, I get the orthodoxy points, and you have no idea how good it feels for the first time in my life to be on the same side as the Pope. It is a drug like no other.
Sermon, because he tends to post those later in the day. So if you're interested, tune in for those. But yesterday was Holy Thursday, and there's a Chrism Mass.
That is, yep,
And
both
Pope
of those
Leo
are true, correct
offered a
statements.
Chrism Mass. And I'm not going to give you this whole homily because that would be not a real point for that. But Novus Ordo Watch posted an excerpt from it, and I did check this.
Okay. The reason why Anthony Stein went and fact checked that is because he has a strong viewpoint, but he also has strong journalistic ethics. And Novus Ordo Watch is a sedevacantist outlet. Novus Ordo Watch literally thinks that Pope Leo is not the Pope, and that's why Novus Ordo Watch just said Leo the 14th, right? Now, like, I admit I will sometimes call him Leo, sometimes I call him Pope Leo, but honestly, the reason why I call him Leo is because, like, I'm at the age where, like, in a parallel universe, Pope Leo is like my uncle, right? So sometimes I call him Leo. It's out of love. These guys are calling him Leo because they're jerks.
Here's what Leo had to say at his Chrism Mass. We are the body of Christ if we move forward, coming to terms with the past without being imprisoned by it. Everything is restored and multiplied if it is first let go without fear. Now that's interesting. We finally know what Novus Ordo Watch says, what it would take not to be part of the body of Christ according to the Novus Ordo religion. One would have to stop moving forward. Part of the body of Christ if we move forward.
Okay, so I'm going to say I like everything that Leo had to say right there. Like 100%. Like, if anybody watching this wants to know why I'm in the Catholic Church, that's why, right? Because Leo is not afraid to say, okay, if theology is the queen of the sciences, we're going to behave like scientists. And that means that we can't ever assume that we got something right back in 1500. We might have, we might not have. But if the theory is good, the theory is good, right? Because again, Catholics are fond of pointing out when we get into fights with Christian fundamentalists, the Catholic Church made up the Bible. Like, literally, like, the Catholic Church made up the Bible. The Catholic Church looked at all of the available books of scripture that were sitting around at the time and were like, okay, we want that one and that one and that one. And oh, those Gnostics over there, they've got a good one. And like, geez, like, okay, I know that like Marcion is a heretic, but the Gospel of Luke like slaps. So I'm going to we'll make the Gospel of Luke canon, but oh yeah, well, the same guy who wrote Luke wrote this other thing where he actually wrote an infancy gospel. So we can just graph that on to the beginning of the ones the Marcionites are using. Boom, 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 heresy solved. Okay, Luke's in the canon, right? That's what Catholics believe the Catholic Church did to make the Bible. So if you tell a Catholic you can't do that because it's not in the Bible, we're going to be like, okay, well, prove to me that that what the Catholic Church does is not an available reading of the text. Because to a Catholic theologian, if you can demonstrate that something is an available reading of the text that was not contradicted by like any other authoritative thing, your insight can be added to the magisterium of the church. And magisterium is basically Catholic for scientific consensus. So basically, what this guy is doing is the Catholic equivalent of young earth creationism. He is saying that the Catholic Church should have frozen its understanding in the year 1, or in the 1200s, or in the 1500s, or something like this, and that we don't have the right, privilege, and responsibility to keep things going, and to keep getting better, and to keep being more awesome. Keeping in mind all available evidence to the contrary, including scripture, right? Because there were apostles who quoted books that did not make it into the canon. Because in the end, people looked at Enoch and they were like, yeah, I mean, I seriously want to do a like series on the like Apocrypha that's basically like, this didn't make it into the canon, and this is why this didn't make it into the canon. Because generally, you can read any book that did not make it into the canon and kind of game out the theological implications of that book. And there is a very, very good reason why it didn't make it into the canon. And I would also like to point out, just for the record, that 9 times out of 10, the reason why that book did not make it into the canon was misogyny, anti-Semitism, homophobia, or something that could be used to support sexual abuse. And I will die on that hill, but if you think I'm wrong, show me a counterexample, because I haven't seen it yet. So I am going to run to the bathroom. I'm going to roll Anthony Stein for just a minute. Mark, are you willing to listen?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay, yeah, just roll him, and I'll pause when I get back, and if there's a question that you have to that you would like me to answer, I will answer it. But I'm just going to let Anthony cook for a second.
Word. Let go of the past. Great. Wonderful. Part of that moving forward appears to be embracing, in the name of ecumenical dialogue, things the Catholic Church itself cannot endorse. Pope Leo, famously, or now infamously, embraced the new arch laywoman of Canterbury, a woman who is LARPing as the Archbishop of Canterbury, a woman who is really into other ladies, as it turns out, and is a big supporter of the sacrifice of the most young to Moloch. He congratulated her, telling her to model herself after the Virgin Mary, and may the Holy Ghost guide and inspire her, and all sorts of other things that cannot possibly be true for heretics, which is what this woman is. So that caused a scandal. And in case you're wondering if there's ever any sign of thawing of feelings between the SSPX and Rome in light of the coming consecrations that are quote unquote illicit, and by illicit, I mean not at all illicit, because the clear state of the emergency in the church at this point, Looking for signs that that's the case. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Go to the SSPX's website where they publish this. Leo and the Anglican Communion, published yesterday on their official English language news website. They have some pretty scathing words about this. And if you think this is bad, I'm going to ask you, what do you think the Counter-Reformation saints would have said about one, an arch-laywoman of Canterbury by itself? What do you think they would have said about that? And then two, the erstwhile Pope of the Church, not only sending her a letter of congratulations that basically recognizes the validity of her office, but also that.
Okay, I'm back. Did I miss anything?
No, he was just criticizing the Archbishop of Canterbury in some pretty explicit sexualized terms.
Yeah, Anthony.
Not a fan, I take it.
Yeah, no, he's not a fan at all. Although in defense of Anthony Stein, I would like to mention that he live streams extremely early in the morning so that he is not taking away working time, like, or rather, he's not live streaming while his kids are up and his wife might need his help. And his wife also has her own little YouTube channel that seems to be mostly built around like old Hollywood. And I've seen them interact on the channel. Like she posts like little cute message, like she'll like offer her 2 cents like in his live chat. So apparently he has a very good relationship with his wife and married a woman who is 100% on board with doing what he wants to do. So, you know, I mean, he's making really bad arguments and using really bad sexualized language. But, you know, I also want people to be fair and realize that, like, probably his wife and his daughter would tell you that he is a wonderful husband and a wonderful father, and they would be telling the truth. And I like to point this out because, like, honestly, part of the problem that we always have is that, like, we think we know, when people say the man or the bear, women pick the bear if they think that the bear is going to be more predictable, right? I can give you a whole list of about 50 men who I would pick over a bear 100% of the time without hesitation. And I have to say that, like, I would even pick Anthony Stein over the bear. I might be ready, like we might not make it off of that mountain because, like, I get annoyed at him and one of us gets pushed off of a cliff, but that would be a personality issue and not a gender one, and I would not be subject to gendered violence at his hands. I'm being, like, as fair and as honest as I can be to someone who I dearly wish would shut down his YouTube channel tomorrow, because I do think he is doing active harm in the world, in spite of the fact that he's not a terrible person. So I'm just trying to be fair.
And inviting her to Rome to meet with him. What do you think they would have thought about that? If we're looking for some penance today, do some penance for the scandal caused by this. On March 20th, 2020.
Okay, scandal caused by this, right? Who is creating the scandal, Anthony? Who is creating the scandal? Is it the Pope? Is it the 90% of the world's Catholics who are neutral to positive about this? Or is it you who is making a living on YouTube criticizing the Pope? Because keep in mind, I have a 46 subscriber YouTube channel. I am not making a living doing this. I am doing this for free. And I am doing this for, you know, fun on Good Friday because I have the day off and I don't have to be to church for another hour and a half. And Mark is here because he is a cool and curious person who is interested to learn all kinds of things and knows that you can learn all kinds of things just from listening to weird people rant at you.
Because the people that you might not agree with may have really
Yeah.
brilliant ideas, and maybe they don't even appreciate the significance of their ideas. Or I think about it, run it through some of my ideas, and come up with something I would have otherwise missed out on. And it might be something they would disagree with in the first place, but knowledge is an interactive activity. And that interaction doesn't only come from, and rather, I would say, especially doesn't always come from people you agree with.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and you kind of, you know, rightly got my rant under control before I verbally outlined my PhD thesis. But what I was trying to say is that, like, the other thing that the traditional European university system did was it also, like, provided polish and education to the, like, sons of the upper class. So basically it kept them from getting bored, right? Because if someone with a lot of money and power is bored, they are going to indulge their capacity to do whatever they want, to, like, sexually exploit people or indulge or overindulge in food and drink or other things that are not good for them, right? But if you give them a hobby, if you say, you know what, dude, why don't you just, like, go, you know what, every gentleman should contribute something to the natural sciences, right? Well, you're going to do one of two things. Either you're going to make sure that this dude is, like, running around the field chasing butterflies instead of running around the field chasing milkmaids. Or if this guy is, like, genuinely really smart and has enough money that he can just sit around and think all day long, you're going to get modern science. Like, that's basically how you get modern science, is by, like, either it's like modern science is the work of priests and armchair intellectuals. And again, the Industrial Revolution killed armchair intellectuals. And that's why all of the amateur scholarship in the 19th century was being done by upper class women. And then the feminist movement happened because you had all of these white women all of these white Protestant women who previously had been said, okay, you can do, like, if you'll take on men's work, we will give you back nuns. We will give women, we will let you be spinsters again, right? And women said, bet. But then there were a whole bunch of women who were like, I want to get married and have kids. Can I please get enough money to do that? Or I'm a widow. Can you please pay me enough to support me and my kids? And the government said, oh yeah, sure. You know, we can give teachers 50 grand. Like, you can live on that if you're smart. A woman can live on practically nothing, right?
Yeah.
So that was, you know, what happened with education. But the result of that was that when education became professionalized and all of those like lady Victorian scholars became college professors, you lost all of your generalists, you lost all your theoreticians, you lost all of the people who could take like a book, who could read a, you lost all of the people who were capable of reading a library and telling you what does it mean. And now we've gotten to the point where some guys who are really good about about building computers think that they can outsource the theory. They think that they can build a computer that can collect all of the raw research, all of the raw data, and tell me, what does this mean? Because the alternative to that is by creating a true meritocracy in which the people who are actually important are the people who can look at something and tell you, what does this mean? What should we do with this, right? But that depends on trusting religious people, and that depends on trusting women. And the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, the Enlightenment killed trusting priests, and the Protestant Reformation killed trusting women. And we need to figure out a way to do that. And the Norman Conquest created white people. And again, if anybody disagrees with any of these theories that I'm throwing out, come at me in the comments or make a response video. Otherwise, like, share, and subscribe. Because, it's Good Friday, and I am a middle-aged white woman who is out of fucks. And for like between now and Easter, I'm just gonna lay out my truth. And I did that in a really ugly and self-indulgent way on April Fool's Day. Well, April Fool's, that was me working through my stuff. So I'm just going to lay out, like, this is my doctoral dissertation proposal. This is my thesis proposal. Before I spend the next 5 years working my way out of indentured servitude and going into fields that don't want women like me right now, I need to go through peer review from the smartest people in the world that I know to tell me if I'm worth it, if my ideas are worth it. Because if I am right, I could rewrite the social sciences and I could make us relevant again. And I could fix a whole lot of social problems if I'm right. But I need to be right, because if I'm wrong, then the lives of the generations of women in my family who produced and trained me and made me into the person who can make this argument, they wasted their lives. And I need to know. So that's why this live stream exists. And that's why I'm really glad that Mark is here, because one of the things that I need as a white woman who is going to be saying some not so nice stuff about white men is I need to have a sensitivity listener. Because, okay, if you are Black if you are brown, if you are indigenous, if you are Asian, if you are gay, if you are trans, you might think that you hate cisgendered white men. There is no one in the world who hates a bad cisgendered white man as much as a white woman who is sexually attracted to men, because that is the curse of Eve. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. But you know what? There is nothing on the world that a woman like me likes and appreciates and values more than a good white cisgendered man. And Mark's wife showed me just now that that's who he is, and he's proven to me that that's who he is. So I don't want to hurt his feelings.
Oh, you're not
Because-
going to hurt my feelings. I don't
Yeah.
disagree with
No,
anything you said, to be
oh,
honest.
No. Okay, Mark, forgive me. At this point, I'm not talking to you. I am talking to the audience. And I am saying Mark is one of the good ones. I'm saying I would pick Mark over the bear. I'm saying that I would let Mark sleep in the same, I would, no, not sleep, because I'm not insane. I would let Mark sit in a room for 1 hour with my daughter if my daughter was in a coma with the door shut. And if you are a mother, you know what I just said. Okay. So basically what I'm saying is that, like, so when I'm like criticizing a man like Anthony Stein, it's helpful for me to have like somebody who is also a middle-aged white guy who can tell me if I'm saying things in a way that will hurt you, because you are my friend and you are my ally, and I don't want to hurt you. I want to point out how these guys are a problem. So thank you for being my sensitivity man. And thank you for being the kind of man who doesn't get offended, who just kind of laughs and rolls his eyes when I call him my sensitivity man.
Kind of like an emotional support, pet.
Exactly. You are my emotional support male. And we need to, if we're going to get past the angry feminist stage or the angry alpha male stage, we have to just be able to just like talk to each other and just be like, okay, yeah, that guy over here, forget him. Okay. So let's hear more about what he has to say about the Archbishop of Canterbury.
26, Pope Leo XIV addressed a message to the, quote, most reverend and most honorable Dame Sarah Mullally, Archbishop of Canterbury, on the occasion of her enthronement. This missive is not without raising serious questions at various levels, which should not be left unanswered. The letter stresses the quote-unquote responsibilities of the lady, quote, not only within the Diocese of Canterbury, but also throughout the Church of England and the Anglican Communion, which immediately requires asking a first question. Of which Anglican Communion does he speak? The Anglican Communion.
Okay, so they are going to give some accurate numbers, but let's be very clear here. The Anglican Communion that Pope Leo is writing to is the Anglican Communion that recognizes King Charles III as head of the Church of England and recognizes the Archbishop of Canterbury as being the Archbishop of Canterbury, regardless of what might or might not be going on under the robes of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Because, you know, in Leo's opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of Anglicans, what is under the robes of the Archbishop of Canterbury is the decision. It is a like something that concerns the king, God, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of Canterbury's doctor, and the Archbishop of Canterbury's spouse. And as far as we know, none of those 5 individuals has raised any objection. So presumably the rest of us should just learn to mind our own business. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Union currently has about 85 million members in some 165 countries, organized into more than 40 autonomous provinces. Historically, this network of churches developed from the Church of England after the English Reformation and expanded globally through the British colonial presence and missionary work. However, during the last century, the demographic center of Anglicanism has shifted considerably towards Africa and parts of Asia, especially as the British center became increasingly liberal, while the African periphery persisted in a conservatism increasingly opposed to Canterbury, a division that has been brewing for nearly a century. The quote-unquote Anglican family, to use the words of the message, today is fully in chaos, even in a constituted breakup, and the accession of Dame Mullally has a role in this situation. It is true that the division has deep historical roots. In 1930, the Lambeth Conference of Anglican Bishops approved the limited use of contraception, marking a significant turning point in moral doctrine. The following decades were marked by further changes. Many Anglican provinces began to ordain women, and in 2014, the Church of England approved the appointment of female bishops. In 2015, the Episcopal Church of the United States authorized James Martin type marriage and made it mandatory in 20.
Okay. He just said James Martin. He is referring to Father James Martin, who is a Jesuit. And James Martin has actually recently written a book that's like an autobiography that focuses on his history of work that I think is really, that I have not read, but I've heard is very good. James Martin also heads up one of the many ministry James Martin also holds up one of the many ministries within the Catholic Church that is aimed at providing pastoral support for LGBTQ people. And James Martin's position on this is very simple, that he is not saying that anyone should not follow the current moral teaching of the Catholic Church. He is saying that for reason, he believes that they should consider changing the current moral teaching of the Catholic Church. That, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that, my friends, is the way that you do dissent in the Catholic Church. And because of that, James Martin is untouchable. And because of that, people like Anthony Stein are very upset because James Martin has a job working for the Vatican in the Dicastery for Communications. James Martin is is a editor at large for America Magazine, which is one of the premier Catholic publications in the English language. James Martin will probably never be a bishop, but that's because James Martin is doing more good where he is doing what he's doing. Anthony Stein is a layman with a podcast. The difference between me and Anthony Stein in terms of access to institutional authority is I'm supporting the Pope and he's supporting schismatics. I'm saying all this so that you understand what a coward Anthony Stein is being when he, rather than saying, I, as a Catholic, have a problem with gay people, I have a problem with the Catholic Church's current teaching on gay people, because he knows that he can't even say that on YouTube. So to avoid getting caught, he is saying James Martin, because he is pretending that he is criticizing James Martin's position and not criticizing the existence of celibate gay people within gay LGBTQ people within the Catholic Church. That is disingenuous, and he is a coward, and I will stand by that. And I am not using an insult. I am saying coward in the technical term. He does not have the courage of his convictions because he wants to keep his YouTube channel open for just a little bit longer so that he can continue to radicalize young Catholic men and young Catholic women. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, really, Mark, you are being too kind and too indulgent. But like I say, this 20-minute video is, as we say in the business, this is a very rich text. And I want you to just like pretend that you are reading a book, only this is the future and we don't have books to read anymore. We just have endless commentary on YouTube channels, because honestly, if Tertullian had just been able to like film the response video to Celsus instead of having to like actually write a book and pay money, and if all we had to do was like run internet archives instead of like paying little guys to like write books or spending money on doing books, I can guarantee you that we would have Tertullian's reply channel. And it would be like mandatory viewing for the last 1,000 years. So you know what? I'm just trying to be like Tertullian. Even though I realize that historically, if I want to go down that road, I have like a 2/3 chance of being regarded as a heretic. But that's okay, because the Catholic Church isn't burning people anymore either. And again, welcome to my TED Talk. Okay, so let's go back to Anthony Stein and his like cries of like pain. Because you know how everybody reads Thomas Aquinas and says, Thomas Aquinas says that part of the reward of the righteous in heaven will be listening to the howls of the damned in hell. And okay, I have to say, as someone who left the Catholic Church basically because like about the 4th time that I got excommunicated, I decided to believe them when they said that they didn't want me around. And I came back because I found some priests who were willing to grant me absolution and tell me that my opinions were okay and that I wasn't a heretic. So that was when I got confirmed. Was when I was really, really sure that the Catholic Church wanted women like me again. And as somebody who was that badly wronged, as somebody who grew to adulthood between the year of the 3 popes and the year of the 2 popes, hearing the man who tipped his hat to me and said, "Submit to Rome, milady," hearing his howls of anguish as now I am on the side of the Pope, and it looks like I'm going to be on the side of the Pope for the rest of my life, and he is going to fall into irrelevance and schism. His whining voice feels really good. And I'm not saying that in a I hate Anthony Stein way. I'm saying that in a I hope that Anthony Stein repents of his error and submits to Rome, because I have been where he is right now, and I genuinely do not wish the experience I had in 1996 on my worst enemy in 2026. Because the only difference between me and Anthony Stein is time, and the fact that this time the right people are winning. Because guess what? We chose love. And you chose, well, you chose people who want to be anti-Semites. And, isn't there something in the Bible about how, like, God blesses those who bless the Jews and curses those who curse the Jews? Just throwing that out there. Particularly since, like, just spoilers for the Good Friday liturgy, but the big change that happened after World War II was they changed the Novus Ordo liturgy. They changed the Easter liturgy to, instead of praying for the Jews to convert to Catholicism, we say, you know what? The Jews have the original covenant, and we just want them, you know what, Jews, God loves you, and just keep being awesome. And if we can help you, just let us know, because we want you to be awesome. So just tell us what kind of support you need, and we'll try to help you out. But maybe if you're being a jerk, we might mention, hey guys, you might want to think about this, but we're not going to be pushy, right? We're not going to be pushy because we have not earned the right to be pushy. We'll just say something and then we'll back off, right? Okay. The modern Catholic Church is growing at a rate of 1 point something percent every year after hemorrhaging membership for decades. And the SSPX is about to go into schism and irrelevance. And their big point is they want to keep cursing the Jews on Good Friday. So going with this is beyond Catholic. This is tinfoil hat territory. But if we want to argue that the Sedevacantists and the SSPX and the main body of the Roman Catholic Church represented a natural experiment in what happens when one group of Christians takes the Good Friday liturgy and continues to curse the Jews, and one group of Christians, otherwise identical, takes the Good Friday liturgy and starts to bless the Jews. And look at, just from an objective point of view, which group is doing better in 2026 than they were doing in 1996 or in 1946 I think that we have to go with the mainstream Catholic Church. Now, am I saying like Pope Leo, therefore God exists? Okay, maybe that's stretching it a little bit far, because I'm not saying that Leo is God, right? I am saying that for me, with my lived experience, the election of Pope Leo and the election of Pope Francis is objective proof that God heard my prayers, because I got what I prayed for. So, the election of the resignation of Pope Benedict, the election of Pope Francis, the election of Pope Leo, therefore God. Prove me wrong. Come up with a naturalistic explanation for what happened and sell me on your interpretation. And Mark has run away because I am like, I am giving you the good high quality version of what happened on my thing. And if Mark comes back as a cookie, I will offer to at some point do a video in which I attempt to explain how like the weirdest and most disappointing thing about Catholicism in the 20th century is that Marian apocalypticism became right-wing coded, because Marian apocalypticism should be the club that progressive Catholics use to prove that the SSPX is like quite possibly literally the work of Satan. And the fact that it isn't is like a source of like constant puzzlement to me. And I know exactly why it happened, and I also know why that kind of thinking is a bad idea to get into. And I know why it didn't happen, but at some point I could very easily lay out like a sample, like I do not believe this is true interpretation of Marian apocalypticism that actually works in terms of interpreting it as prophecy, that I think is actually like even a like worthwhile just like participant observer case study in prophecy interpretation. But I'm not going to do that to Mark today, because he has already been way, way, way too indulgent. And besides, I only have 45 minutes, and I want to get through this 20-minute video. So Mark, unless you have anything else that I've said that I want to do to you, that you would like me to do or say.
No, I thought that the whole thing was fascinating.
Okay.
Although I'm assuming that the people who are watching this are going to be interested in SSPX.
Yeah,
And I'm somewhat familiar with it, but maybe you'd want to include a little more of
okay.
an introduction for those of us who are,
Yeah. Okay.
not.
Okay. If okay, I realize that as a 46 subscriber YouTube channel, it is always perilous to assume that anyone has ever watched any of my content. But I have actually this is the third or fourth video that I have actually done on the SSPX. And one of those, and the first video in that series, I actually do like just kind of a deep dive
Gotcha.
about like putting all the pieces on the table. So thank you for pointing that out. However, rather than wasting your time further, I am just going to say to the audience, if you're like sitting there going, who is the SSPX? Just pause this video, go watch the other videos in the series. Eventually there
Perfect.
will be a playlist, and then you will know, you will have the background knowledge that you need to know to see how this happens. And this is also letting me lay out my argument that pretty much everything that happens of any consequence among like traditional Catholic YouTube is basically going to be built around the assumption that people are at this point basically signaling, are they going to follow the Pope or are they going to follow the SSPX when the schism happens? And spoilers, one of the things that's really interesting is that there has not been anybody except for Vigano and Strickland who have excommunicated schismatic former Archbishop Carl Maria Vigano, or forced into retirement way before he normally would have been, both because of gross financial mismanagement in his very small diocese in Texas, as well as like advocating for sedevacantist positions on his Twitter account, right? So basically, like Strickland and Vigano, who already have like absolutely no power or influence, have come out in favor of the SSPX. Nobody else has. Which means that the SSPX's move for survival, which was basically going to be to try to get an anti-pope appointed, which was what John Henry Weston was trying to gin up, not going to happen. It also means that like that's why they're going crazy trying to smear Pope Leo with all the Pachamama, oh my God, Pope Leo is an idolater thing. I did a couple of videos on Pachamama, and next week we're going to kind of give you like the most up-to-date information about Leo and the Pachamama drama, because there's a lot of Pachamama drama. So anyway, but yeah, we'll just continue with Anthony Stein, because I think he said he actually talks about two things, and this is probably the only one that will be relevant.
18. Other Western Anglican churches have adopted similar policies and opened ordination to openly James Martin type clergy.
Gay.
Conservative
He means
provinces,
they
particularly
are
in Africa,
ordaining
have
celibate
rejected these
gay men.
advances. Churches such as the Anglican Church in Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania have maintained their traditional teaching on marriage and do not allow women to be bishops in their jurisdictions. Tensions flared up again in 2025 when Cherry Van was elected.
Okay, I just wanted to say the traditional teachings on marriage thing, because this is another area where Anthony Stein is misrepresenting his actual position and being incredibly disingenuous. Because when he says they have affirmed their traditional teachings on marriage, what he means is that those countries in Africa believe that sex and gender are both assigned at birth, right? And they believe that only married couples should have sex, and they only believe that men and women can get married, right? However, in Africa, there is a preference for married clergy, and there is a strong cultural preference for polygyny, right? particularly like if if a couple is married and for whatever reason it is not, the woman is not physically capable of carrying a pregnancy to term for whatever reason, or if a man just has a lot of money to the point that he can pay like for like 12, 15 kids, right? He can support 3 or 4 women. Well, for women who want to be married and want to just stay at home and raise their kids, entering into a polygamous union with a very rich man is the smart move if you want to have security for your children, right? And the argument of the African bishops is basically like, why shouldn't we allow like people who want to use their power for good, right? And who want to use their sexuality responsibly and who want to allow a woman who is infertile to still be married and have and get to raise children. Why don't we allow polygamy? Because all of the same arguments that y'all are making in Europe and the Americas for not allowing, for like allowing same-sex marriage, we can make those arguments in our culture for allowing polygamous marriage. And besides, polygamy's in the Bible. And Jesus never actually condemns polygamy, right? Jesus never actually condemns polyandry. There's a whole bunch of stuff Jesus never explicitly condemns, right? And in fact, when Jesus meets the Samaritan woman at the well, and she has had 5 husbands, and she now has a husband, she now has a man who is not her husband. Jesus doesn't talk shit about her, and Jesus doesn't tell her to go and sin no more, right? Now, I am no. What I am doing is I am saying this is I am not advocating for polygamy in a Christian context. What I am doing is I am attempting to steel man the Christian argument for polygamy as it is being made in part by the African bishops, right? That's their argument. And honestly, it's hard to argue with them, right? Like they have a tight argument. They have a really tight argument. And they might even be right. I don't know. I'm not the Pope. I am unqualified to ever be Pope. But the point is that because of that, trad Caths, even if they are not racist, and Anthony Stein is not a racist, no man who ever put on a fedora is a racist. Anthony Stein does not trust the African bishops on issues of sexual morality because he knows that the second we get an African pope who is actually born and raised in Africa, that they're probably going to loosen up the church's teachings on polygamy. And right now, the Catholic Church is not ready to have that conversation. So they're just not having the conversation right now. And honestly, there's a couple of really highly qualified African cardinals who did not become Pope because of the polygamy issue. And now I don't have a problem with anybody who says no polygamy. I have a problem with someone who does not trust these people on the issue of human sexual morality and is willing to cherry pick when he is going to work with them on the basis of whether or not they are on the same side as him or not. Because either he trusts Africans on polygamy, or he does not trust African, or he does not have the right to argue for the African position on heterosexuality. Because African heterosexuality does not work without polygamy. And if you disagree with me, again, make a reply video, come on my thing, tell me I'm wrong. So again, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And again, if you ever need to tell me
Archbishop of
shut up
Wales.
and calm down,
She
do
became the
that.
first female archbishop of the Anglican churches of the United Kingdom, and the first openly, we'll say, female equivalent of James Martin type bishop living with her partner to hold the office.
Okay. I am going to read what he did not read in a sneer tone because I want the record to say what this said. The first openly lesbian bishop living with her partner. Partner in a UK context is not an insult because in the UK British usage, everyone refers to their significant other as their partner. In American English usage, I would say the first openly lesbian bishop living with her wife to hold the office of primate within the Anglican Communion. Anthony Stein does not like her because she is a woman, because she is ordained, and because she is gay. I don't know what specifically he thinks should be done to lesbians. He has said that he thinks gay men should be like just locked up in a monastery somewhere, like preferably in solitary confinement. I assume that he is planning on the same kindness for lesbians who are unwilling to marry men and breed.
Office of primate within the Anglican Communion. Henry Ndikuba, primate of the Church of Nigeria, the largest Anglican province in the world, criticized the decision, seeing it as proof that certain sectors of the communion were.
Oh, I apologize. Archbishop Mullally of Canterbury, I just want to clarify, is not a lesbian. There was a different female bishop who was being referred to as a lesbian.
Historical faith. The most recent element of this confrontation was the election of Sarah Mullally as Archbishop of Canterbury. Although she upheld the definition of marriage as the union of a man and a woman, she supported proposals allowing James Martin type pairings to be blessed and spoke of the need of the church to recognize the harm suffered by these kinds of people.
Same sex. Again, he means same sex.
The World Conference of the Future of Anglicanism, or GAFCON, is the Global Fellowship of Confessing Anglicans, founded in Jerusalem in 2008, was born from this evolution. The movement was created by conservative bishops who believed that doctrinal developments within the Western Anglican churches, particularly in matters of sexuality and ecclesiastical authority, went beyond what they considered to be biblical teaching. Notice, by the way, they're couching all this in kind of a relative language, what they consider to be faith, what they consider to be biblical teaching. And there's a reason for that, and that is because, apologies, to any sensitive, feelings that might be a little stuffed here by any Protestants watching, but according to traditional Catholic doctrine, these are heretics, strictly speaking.
Okay. I also want you to think about this from like a very political inside baseball, how the sausage got made thing. Okay. because let's talk about who, like, and I'm not going to talk about Leo and um Sarah like by their titles. I'm going to talk about them by like who they are in secular terms, right? The head of a very large NGO based in the UK met with the head of an even larger NGO based in Rome. These two NGOs have a history of working together and indeed used to be part of the same organization, although they broke off because of like CEO drama like a while ago, but there's no like major issues that they couldn't patch up. And in the course of that conversation, the head of the UK based NGO said, you know what? I'm dealing with a whole bunch of people who, really just aren't comfortable with like me being in charge as a woman. And Leo was like, my sister in Christ, I hear you. Because right now I'm dealing with a bunch of people who are like big mad at me for like existing and for the fact that like I'm not like like burning indigenous people alive in the Amazon anymore because like that hasn't we've realized that wasn't a good idea like 300 years ago. And she's like, what are your guys going to do? And he's like, well, my guys are about to go into schism. And she's like, oh, your guys are about to go into schism. My guys are about to go into schism. And then, and again, I am imagining this dialogue, right? And then Leo says to her, what do you think would happen to your guys if they went into schism? And she says, well, you know what? They seem to really like your guys that are about to go into schism. And Leo's going to say, hey, do you want to keep your job as Archbishop of Canterbury? And, by the way, you can solve my women's ordination problem just by existing. And she's going to say, well, you know what? I need to go talk to my actual boss, Chuck. But you know what? And Leo's like, hey, I met Chuck. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, I even gave him this fancy chair that like, because like I was really happy that he just like came by to hang out. And she's like, I know, right? Isn't he Chuck's kind of a cool guy. So what I am saying in like more serious academic tone is that basically at the current moment, the Pope and the Archbishop of Canterbury are in a position where were the Church of England to come back into communion with the Catholic Church, that basically the most probable bad outcome from the point of view of both of these two people would be that the most conservative people in the Anglican Church and the most conservative people in the Roman Catholic Church will become allies just long enough to create this like nasty high control thing that will ultimately fall apart over whether they hate gay people or polygamy worse. And do you want to know the best part? Leo doesn't have to do anything to make them. All he has to say is, the door's that way. if you want to sit at my table, you can speak politely to everyone else sitting at my table. And if they storm out on the day that Leo the 14th heals the Anglican schism, he gives us a Catholic King of England, something that no pope has been able to do since Henry VIII. Do you have any idea how much political capital Pope Leo the 13th would get? They would have to come up with a very special pope title for him because Leo the Great is already taken. That was the first Leo. He has just, if Leo the 14th can pull this up, there's a really good chance that the next pope will be Leo the 15th, because he wants to make it clear that he is continuing with that Leo riz. Because Leo the 14th is, like Jake and Elwood Blues, a white man from Chicago who loves the blues, and he knows that the first thing that you got to do is get the band back together. And you know what? If they don't want to come and join the band, you know what? They've got a nephew who will fill in, and their nephew is, or your bass player's nephew will fill in, or Cab Calloway's granddaughter knows how to play the drums. And the show will go on because we've got to save the penguin. Only in this case, the penguin is the Mother Church, and Pope Leo is on a mission from God. And it's entirely possible that Marawa is going to be riding shotgun. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Okay, I'm sorry that was really goofy and self-indulgent, but you know, I kind of feel like I am, like, as somebody whose family background is similar but also very different from Pope Leo's, I think that I'm kind of in a unique position to, like, explain him in a way that I don't think a lot of people are. The big difference between Leo and I, for the record, is that Leo's from Chicago, my family's from downstate, and you know, also, like, his family, his mom's family actually is white passing. My dad's family was only forced into becoming white passing. In his case, his family went from being white passing to being white because of a decision to marry a French person. In my case, my family went from being white to being white passing because of a decision to marry a French person. So really, we can blame the French, and I will be glad to hold forth on how, like, part of the story of race in America that is underappreciated is the way that immigrants from Southern Europe, particularly Spain, France, and Italy, and Portugal, completely just threw American racial classifications into chaos in a way that is probably going to destroy whiteness as a category if we are very, very lucky. So, but that's not the video I'm making today. I am going to try to at least wrap up the SSPX if Mark is willing to just sit here with me for another like little bit. And I promise there will be no more tangents. The TED Talk has
I do have
ended.
to go in I have to go in 15 minutes, but yeah,
Okay.
I would love to hear the
Okay,
wrap
so
up.
do you want to just go? I need to go in about 15 minutes too.
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
we'll just roll for 15 minutes, and when we're done, we're done. And I will be heckling on Dr. Kip Davis's live stream. So that's where I will be. So let's go.
Although the movement claims not to be an independent church, its influences continue to grow. Some provinces and dioceses, adhering to its theological perspective, already distanced themselves from the traditional structures of the Anglican Communion. The recent meeting in Abuja has
Independent church is basically just the term for Anglican churches who are no longer in communion with the Archbishop of Canterbury, almost exclusively over the issues of gay stuff or ordaining women.
only ratified a fragmentation that is already more or less established. Meeting in the Nigerian capital during the first week of March, GAFCON leaders announced the establishment of a global leadership structure aimed at representing what the movement considers to be the majority of Anglicans, faithful to quote unquote traditional doctrine around the world, the Anglican World Council. Faced with this situation, Tom Middleton, director of Forward in Faith, a group representing the English Anglicans, told Our Sunday Visitor News, a Catholic news site, that the Anglican Communion no longer existed as a coherent organization. Unlike the Catholic Church, it is at best a loose federation. Thus, Dame Mullally no longer represents anything but a Church of England, certainly rich in millions, but completely out of breath and on the brink of extinction. A passage from Pope Leo XIV's letter quotes the joint declaration of the 5th of October 2016. Quote, despite much progress, our immediate predecessors, Pope Francis and Archbishop Justin Welby, frankly acknowledge that new circumstances have generated new disagreements between us. Of what circumstances does it speak? The text of the declaration makes it clear. These disagreements concern, quote, in particular, the ordination of women and more recent questions relating to human sexuality. A well-informed actor, Monsignor Michael Nazir Ali, who was received into the Catholic Church in 2021 and was a member of 2 Catholic Anglican discussion commissions, shares his thoughts. He admits that currently it is no longer possible to think of a union with Anglicanism. He adds, we must be careful now to measure Anglican doctrines and practices by what the Catholic Church teaches, he says. The fact that Anglicans are so divided is a call to Catholics to be clear about what they stand for. Just going to give you a thought here. You know Anglicans, real Anglicans, conservative Anglicans, ones attached to the Book of Common Prayer, who attend some higher form of their liturgy, who maybe they get a little partisan about things. Maybe they actually believe.
Okay, I'm going to go out of screen sharing because and this is going to be direct commentary on what he just said at the end, right? Because he brought up something super interesting that I don't think a lot of people appreciate, that could actually like really be a game changer, and that's the issue of liturgy, right? Because walk with me, okay? Within the Roman, okay, the Council of Trent happened, right? The Council of Trent established a single Latin liturgy for the Mass and abolished any rite of the Mass that was less than 200 years old, right? Effectively, that meant that in most of Europe, everything except the Tridentine Rite went away, right? The exceptions were like, there's a couple of like very minor rites in Spain, and then it's all Eastern Rite churches, right? The one exception to that was England, because in England, in the 13th century, the usage of the Mass that happened at the Salisbury Cathedral was established as the Sarum Rite. It was a rite that happened in Latin, and when you translate it into English, it is like 90% the current usage of the Anglican Church, especially when they are going with a high church rite, right? Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Mhm.
Right? Okay. So what happened was what happened is the English Reformation happens, right? The English Reformation happens. The Sarum Rite gets translated into the vernacular and becomes the Book of Common Prayer, right? The Catholic priests who are being trained in France and being smuggled into England at great risk to their own lives are not being trained in the Sarum Rite anymore, right? They are trained in the Tridentine liturgy. When the Catholic Church becomes legal in England in the 18th century, and I want to be perfectly clear here, it was illegal to be Catholic in England for about 150 years, and
Yeah, violent.
there were significant political disability, social and political disabilities that attached to that 100% affect people's lives to this very day, right? Like, this is a real thing that I am talking about. Okay. So the Sarum Rite was not revived when Catholicism became legal in England. The Sarum Rite basically went extinct. It's not being used. There are no Sarum Rite Catholics in the world, right? But it is a valid Latin liturgy. It is a valid Latin liturgy. It is and also it has been translated into the vernacular, right?
Going with that. Interesting.
So we are setting up a situation where, God willing, the Anglican Communion and the Catholic Church and the Roman Catholic Church come back into communion. If that happens, this is the most likely possibility. We will keep the English vernacular Mass, which will be the English translation of the universal rite of the Catholic Church as it exists in the current Missal of the Catholic Church in this year of grace, 2026, and can be offered in any language from English to Swahili to Tagalog to Latin. That can remain a standard rite. Then we can have the Anglican usage of the Mass, which, after all, is just the vernacular translation of the Sarum Rite. And the Sarum Rite is a perfectly valid, according to the Council of Trent, Catholic rite of the Mass. The trads can't touch it. And so now, if like the Anglicans want to use the English translation of the Sarum Rite, why should they not be allowed to? Because there were already Eastern Christians who are using a lot in diaspora communities who are starting to use English translations of their liturgies, or whatever the vernacular translation of their liturgy is, right? And then Leo can do one thing for English-speaking Catholics who are deeply attached to the Latin Mass, who are deeply attached to the history of Catholicism in England. He can give us back the solemn rite of the Mass. And he can do it by healing the Anglican schism, and he can do it by allowing openly gay people to be ordained, because guess what? That's allowed already. They can figure out some kind of a compromise on unions for same-sex couples. And I am willing to bet that there is, and I am willing, if anybody wants to hear it, throw out my argument about how there is a completely, like, we are going back to Aquinas way to solve the same-sex marriage problem. Polygamy is harder. Somebody smarter than me is going to have to handle polygamy. But you know what? Aquinas couldn't figure out the Immaculate Conception, so I'm willing to recognize my limitations. You can solve a whole bunch of problems through some really easy theological tweaks that go back to the Middle Ages. It can be done. And what does Leo lose by solving the Anglican schism? It costs Leo losing people who hate him anyway. And it means that Queen Camilla might have to be given the privilège du blanc, which she will misuse because that woman does not know how to dress. But if you tell Kate Middleton, hey, you can be one of 5 women in the world who is allowed to wear a white dress in the presence of the Pope, and everybody will be talking about how cool that is, that you are the second Catholic Queen of England. If Leo has to pay that price, I don't know what price Leo would pay. I'm not Leo. I cannot predict his actions. I know that if I were in Leo's place, I would be like calling up, you know, my good friend in Canterbury and my good friend in wherever it is that Charles likes to hang out. And I would say, hey guys, you doing anything this weekend? You want to come over to Rome? Like, I can cook up some brats. You know, would you rather have Peruvian food? Because like my cook's Peruvian. She'll make like these empanadas. Like you would not believe the empanadas that come from this woman's hands, right? Okay. And he could solve all their problems in a hurry. And that's what we call a win-win situation. And Leo is an American, and there's nothing an American likes better than a situation that lets everybody walk away from the table feeling happy about life and leaves the people who don't like you just kind of sitting in a corner crying while you live your best life. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, you know, everything is going to fall apart and end in tears and disaster and nuclear war. But I don't think I am. I don't know, Mark, what do you think?
I think I'm writing some of this down, so it's obviously getting my attention.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, but thank you for riding with this ride with me. I hope it's at least been entertaining. I kind of did a really bad and self-indulgent version of this on April Fool's Day. So I decided that, you know, now that I had ascended to the heights of being a 46 subscriber YouTube channel, that, you know, my fans, because really, you know, really in the, you know, speaking, you know, like as somebody who's tasting success for the first time, like all good football, you know, all good players of my favorite sport, I just have to go, because you know what? If I made a goal, it's all because of my fans and my team and the help of Jesus Christ. And on that note, I am going to thank everyone who tuned in. I am going to thank Mark for being on the team. If you ever want to come on again and talk about Nerd Church, if you find a video that you want me to respond to, if you just want to, like, you know, come and chill out with me every so often, you are always welcome back, because I don't know about you, I had a good time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting. I appreciate the
Okay,
invite,
cool.
and
Okay.
glad I could be here.
Okay, well, thank you. I will let you go so you can get to work, and then I can, you know, harass Kip Davis for a second, and then I will go to church. Okay.